May the words of my mouth and the meditations of all of our hearts be pleasing to you, O God, our rock and our Redeemer. Let's do this again. Alleluia, Christ is risen.
Alleluia, Christ is risen.
Christ is risen indeed. Today, we celebrate the happy ending of the story. Perhaps the happiest ending in all of history. Christ has been raised from the dead. And we receive the promise that God's life, God's love will triumph over everything, even over death and the grave, even over violence and injustice, even over everything that plagues us and our world. God's life will bring resurrection. But let's rewind for a minute and spend a minute with Mary Magdalene and her tears. It is no wonder that she is weeping so inconsolably. Think about what she has been through. We first meet her in the Bible early in Jesus' ministry when we learn that he has healed her. She has had 7 demons in her. And whether you think that means spiritual forces or the way that the ancient world made sense of severe mental illness, we can be sure that whatever was afflicting her was so extreme to be understood as 7 demons. She must have known so much terror, so much trauma. And Jesus heals her. Understandably, she becomes completely devoted to Jesus after her healing. She becomes one of his most prominent, faithful followers, and even provides for him out of her means, as do several other women. And she is the only one who the Bible mentions as being with Jesus throughout every moment of his death and burial and time in the tomb. She is first found with him at the cross, watching the crucifixion. She stays at the foot of the cross along with some other women as everyone else flees and abandons Jesus. When he dies and is taken off of the cross, she is with Mary, his mother, as he is buried. And then she comes, the Bible tells us in other parts, with spices and other women to anoint his body. And now here in John, we have her arriving by herself in the hopeless pre-dawn moments just to be with Jesus again, even now. But she discovers that huge stone has been rolled away and the tomb is empty. So even as she goes to alert the disciples and they come to see for themselves, they end up going home. But she won't. She is going to follow Jesus to the very end and look for him and seek him out, even if all that is left of him is that lifeless body. And she is going to go and look for it. She has been through a crucifixion. She has watched the one she loved and had devoted her entire life to be tortured and crucified. She had seen his body laid in the tomb with a huge rock put in front of it. And now that last little shred she has of Jesus seems to be gone. She doesn't even have a body to grieve at. Her hope is gone. Her despair overwhelms her. Her trauma and grief overwhelm her. And she begins to weep inconsolably. And in that moment, in the moment of utter, untethered grief, of trauma, of terror and despair, she hears her name spoken. And suddenly, the reality of the resurrection dawns on her completely because she knows that voice. Only one person says her name in quite that way, with quite that love, with quite that tenderness, and she knows it is Jesus. She has not been left alone in her grief, in her trauma, in her despair. Jesus, the one she followed even past the end, has come and found her. Many of us can relate to Mary and her grief and her trauma. Maybe it's because we have lost and have grieved a loved one. Maybe it's because we have witnessed or experienced the horrors and traumas of this world, and they still tear us apart. Maybe it's because we feel hopeless as we look out at the world, at war, at so many injustices, and feel like there's no chance of anything getting better. But the reality is, today tells us those tombs that we're looking at, they're not the end of the story. They're just the beginning. Because we know that when we come to the end of our ability to endure, when we are overwhelmed by grief and trauma and despair, God is there. God is there calling to us, calling to you, calling to me, calling our names. Love hearing babies. It's just a moment of Easter joy and resurrection. We know this is not the end of the story. Mary, driven by her love, followed Jesus past the very end. We can learn so much from her. We can learn so much about what it means to love our God, to love even when there seems to be no hope. She had no way of knowing that resurrection was on the other side. And yet her love drove her to go seek out Jesus in whatever way she could, because she may not have known what was coming. Her brain may not have been able to understand, but she knew Jesus. She knew his love, and it drove her to keep going. Like Mary, we can keep going, even in the face of what looks like the most dead end ever. We can continue to love and to be loved and to be driven by love. We can follow Jesus even when it seems like there is no hope. We can do what Jesus has called his followers to do. We can welcome the stranger. We can feed the hungry, clothe the naked, visit those in prison, and care for the sick, no matter what is going on around us. We are reminded today that even when it looks like there are only tombs as far as the eye can see, the God of resurrection is with us. With Mary Magdalene, we will be greeted, even in our most hopeless moment, even in the world's most hopeless moment, by the God who knows us in and out, by the God who performs miracles, by the God who brings life out of death and hope out of the rubble, and calls us each by name. Alleluia, Christ is risen. I'll have to train you all on that.